Yep, we're ready.
Great. Thank you, Orly, for coordinating this. Welcome, everyone, to our conversation this afternoon. PreVeil's 10 Steps to Compliance. Wherever you are in the CMMC cycle, in the journey to CMMC compliance, I think you'll appreciate the content that we're going to cover today. It is somewhat specific to PreVeil and the PreVeil solutions that we provide our customers for CMMC compliance. But some of it's also generally, I think, applicable as well, no matter what path that you decide to take. Um, just will note before we even get started that just in the last couple of days, PreVeil has added another 3 customers to the CMMC certified 110 of 110 list. So we're really pleased with that. We're now around 25 total customers, including 5 C3PAOs who use PreVeil for their authorization. So really pleased with how that's going. I look forward, of course, to having hundreds and hundreds over the next couple of years achieve that as well. So Vince Petrecca, I head up the sales, customer success, and partner teams at PreVeil. And with me is Noel Vestal. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Noel.
Hi there, thanks, Vince. I'm the Chief Compliance Officer here at PreVeil, and I also, for those of you who don't know, was a PreVeil customer when I implemented these 110 controls. Still the only one here who was a former customer, so I'm proud of that one.
Excellent. Well, we're very happy to have you on board here, Noel, so that you can multiply the impact you can have on the CMMC industry by helping hundreds and hundreds of customers achieve their CMMC compliance over time. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to cover some higher level information about the CMMC journey and the PreVeil solution. And then Noel is going to dive into the details of PreVeil's CMMC compliance accelerator and how that can help you really along your path and really ease your process. It's a difficult process. CMMC compliance is someone must have someone seemed to intentionally want to make this challenging. 110 of anything is challenging. There are 110 controls, 320 assessment objectives that we have to address here. So our job since we started down this path years ago for NIST and CMMC compliance has been to make that job as simple as possible for you. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and we'll get going. At any point in time, if you have questions, please put them into the Q&A and we'll probably get to those after after we finish the prepared portion of this, or one of us may jump in and answer it online. All right, so topics we'll cover today. Latest CMMC timeline, couple updates there. Some general discussion on the challenges of CMMC compliance. Just a little bit of detail on PreVeil's technology platform that supports the protection of CUI and ITAR. Then Noel will jump in with the 10 steps to CMMC and the compliance accelerator walkthrough. I'll just provide a brief update and a couple other highlights on PreVeil and our partner community, and then we'll take questions at that time. So Noel, as PreVeil's Chief Compliance Officer, would love to hear your update here. I know even this slide has recently become a bit outdated. It happens in this space. So tell us what the latest situation is and how the folks on the line should see this as having shifted a bit.
Absolutely. And to your point, this literally just changed. We're talking days ago. So yeah, CMMC is constantly evolving, even though we now have the final rule out. So you'll see on the left-hand side in the orange boxes, it's talking about, the final rule being published in 2024, the effective date being December 16th of 2024. So now we've kind of moved past that. Yep, we have an established CMMC guidelines, but okay, we don't have the CFR 48 piece, which is the other blue box you see on the right-hand side. CFR 48, although 32 CFR or Title 32 you see in the orange box, that's the final rule for CMMC. CFR 48 is the rule that is actually how it gets into contracts. So this is for your contracting officers to be able to understand how to implement that into a contract. Until that comes out, there aren't going to be there's going to be a very limited number of contracts that have the CMMC requirement on them. Obviously, that doesn't change. Your prime could still put pressure on you. Absolutely. You could be in one of those identified contracts that will have CMMC in it this year. There are definitely requests for proposals and requests for informations, RFIs and RFPs that have that requirement as well. So that's something to look out for. But essentially, what we're waiting on is CFR 48 to come out, and then there'll be a 60-day review period by OIRA, and then it will go into effect. The reason why this is so important, aside from the fact that then you can actually put CMMC into contracts, is that that is when the phased rollout approach really sort of begins. Originally, as you see on the right-hand side, we thought it was going to come out last month, this month. It was supposed to come out within like the first quarter. We heard last week at a big conference that a lot of us were at in the industry that, according to Stacey Bostianic, who's the head of the CMMC program at the DoD, be on or before September 1st is the goal for when they're going to get this out. So just imagine that blue kind of shifted down a bit. There have been some changes with regulation requirements with the new administration, and so they're working through all of that. But she has said that on or before September 1st, so basically by the end of the fiscal year, we should have CFR 48 coming out. And what that means is when it comes out, phase 1 begins, and then phase 2 a year after that, and phase 3 and phase 4. So if you're not familiar with the phases, I would definitely suggest taking a look at them. They're in the final 32 CFR rule. But yeah, as you see here on the bottom, Katie Arrington, who founded the CMMC program and who is currently still acting as the DoD CIO, CMMC is not pausing. CMMC is here to stay. There is no question about that. So if anybody was confused, this is the person who created CMMC. So make sure that if you are not already starting that effort, you definitely want to get started. Don't wait for CFR 48, especially if you're going to need an assessment, because a lot of assessors are getting booked up already.
Yeah, great. Excellent, Noel. A couple follow-up questions for you. What about folks, that might already have a CY or DFAR 7012 clauses in their contracts?
Such a good question. If you already have a DFAR 7012 requirement, you are already expected to be applying all of this to your CUI boundary. So your NIST 800-171, those 110 controls that Vince was talking about, those 320 objectives. If you have signed a contract, or if you're a subcontractor under a contract that has a DFAR 7012 clause, you're already expected to do this. And I will say that the Department of Defense and the Department of Justice are coming down even harder on people. I've said it a million times in the past couple of years, but I'll keep saying it. The CCFI, if you're not familiar with them, that is the Civil Cyber Fraud Initiative. That is a task force dedicated to finding people who are not in compliance with these different regulations in your contracts. And they are increasing, not decreasing, those assessments. So if you got a random assessment, if someone calls you from the DoD and says, I need to see your information, that's the avenue they're using to review you, because you've already signed a contract stating you're going to do that. So definitely, if you're not already implementing these and you have a DFAR 7012 clause, you are already late. So get started.
Very good. And then also you mentioned before that CFR 48 is connected to the CMMC requirements being seen in contracts, but aren't we seeing that already in RFPs from some of
Absolutely.
the military agencies?
Absolutely. A good example is Army MEPS. That is a massive BPA, or blanket purchase agreement, that comes out every 10, 15 years. That already has a CMMC requirement, because it's a 10-year blanket purchase agreement. In 10 years, CMMC is going to be up and running, and they all know that. So to your point, Vince, they're prepping for this. So a lot of these different RFPs and RFIs are making that part of that requirement already, because they don't want to have to rewrite the contract again in a couple years when this is already, when everybody is supposed to do this, and this is in all the contracts. So yeah, absolutely, absolutely correct.
We're hearing from many of the folks that we're talking with out in the market that they're seeing their customers or folks really wanting to have adherence to these requirements, not a full certification, but that they be along with their SSP, that they have their SPRS score completed, that they be down the path here, that they have a platform to protect CUI in place, to obtain future contracts. So the time is now. The longer you wait, the more expensive and painful it's going to be. So it's kind of
More
like,
risk. You got
let's
more
get
risk. I mean, why do
exactly.
that to yourself? And just to close that out, CFR 48 is just a mechanism for CMMC to get into contracts. Remember, CMMC is a verification of that DFAR 7012 clause. So just remember that. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so just to highlight, and we'll get into how we help address, how PreVeil helps address some of the challenges as we go. But what are some of the broad challenges that you're facing? Um, First of all, just real in a basic sense, the CUI ITAR content needs to be protected per the rules, per the DFAR 7012 rules that are already in place in contracts. And that requires a separate platform. If you're using Office 365, standard Google, an on-prem Exchange server, et cetera, that's not going to meet the requirements, as is. So you need to consider platform options. Obviously, PreVeil's solution is one of those, operating in the AWS GovCloud, helping you to meet many of the CMMC requirements, offering you a place for encrypted email, encrypted file storage, encryption sharing, being your repository of content is one of those, but there's so many options. You could have PreVeil in its standard deployment, or you could use PreVeil in a virtual desktop environment. You may have heard about virtual desktop environments. There's pros and cons to those. We can help you sort through that, but that's available. And then, of course, there's other solutions out there as well. Always be careful. You'll want to work, as we mentioned before, PreVeil's had about 25 of our customers that have been certified as 110 to 110. Ideally, you want to work with someone that has had certified CMMC customers. That's sort of a very important proof point in terms of someone that you want to hitch your wagon to. How about cost, right? Lots of options here for how you approach this, how much you want to do yourself, how much you want to outsource or get assistance from otherwise. I mentioned before about virtual desktop versus standard deployment. VDI or virtual desktop tends to be significantly more expensive. Some benefits to it, but certainly one of the cons is the cost. PreVeil itself and its standard deployment, along with the compliance accelerator that Noel is going to show you, from our experience, is one of the most cost-effective methods that you can use to get to the finish line for CMMC. But you need to consider that. What can you afford? What do you want to afford? And how do you want to work this into your workflow? The compliance documentation task is significant. Look, getting PreVeil or up and running may only take a few days. You can move your CUI into PreVeil, and that's fairly straightforward to do. We'll help you with that. Generating all the compliance documents and making sure they're in the proper format, that they contain the appropriate content, that they actually meet the controls, they actually are the answers that the C3PAO assessors are looking for. That's the tough part. And working your way through that is challenging. That's why we've made it such a focus over the last few years to make it as easy as possible for many of our customers to be able to attach us. And Noel is going to show you step by step how we do that with our compliance accelerator. And then really remember, compliance is not a one-time thing. So you always have to look at the lifetime cost here. This is just going to go on, whether it's the cost of your licenses based on the solution you choose, the infrastructure, the compliance model you decide to select. It needs to be sustainable from a manpower perspective, sustainable from a cost perspective. So we're very focused, along with you, on solutions that you can maintain over the long term in a cost-effective manner. But so don't focus just on getting to 110 the first time. You really have to think about what's going to cost you to maintain this environment over the long term. With PreVeil, you have a very straightforward opportunity to create an enclave of users. You don't have to have everyone in your organization set up to be in your compliance boundary. Anytime you can create an enclave or a subset of your employees is going to save you a lot of time and money, not just initially, but over 5, 10 plus years. It really is going to add up. Okay, so just one more slide here on the PreVeil model, and I'm going to hand this over to Noel to deep dive into our compliance strategy. But the PreVeil value proposition really is divided into 3 areas. One is our actual platform, secure, encrypted email, file storage, and sharing. We make it extremely easy, built right into your workflows. You can have your encrypted email in Outlook. You can have your encrypted files in File Explorer on your device. Everything's stored fully encrypted in the AWS GovCloud, including all your file versions, all your email archive, all your system logs, etc. It's all in AWS GovCloud, fully encrypted. Even PreVeil can't see what is in your content. We can't decrypt it ourselves. That's how secure it is. PreVeil meets the FedRAMP requirements. We meet the FIPS requirements for encryption. We meet the DFAR C through G requirements for media preservation and incident reporting. These are critical. And we meet the State Department requirements for ITAR, export controlled content. As part of this, we'll be providing support, partial support for 102 of the 110 controls for NIST CMMC. And that obviously accelerates your process right there with what you gain from PreVeil. Closely related is the compliance accelerator, this central column here with the pre-filled documentation. This is actually a, specifically, these aren't templates. This is completely completed content that, if the content we've created matches the way your business works, or if you match the way your business works to our content, you can use that primarily to submit for proof that you meet these controls as part of this. This is going to be all of the documentation that you would need for a standard type of assessment. So access to over 60 compliance documents. This is going to be your system security plan, your shared responsibility matrix, your standard operating procedures, artifacts, lists and things to show that you're doing what you say you will do when you operationalize this compliance model. And that detailed content covers all 110 controls, not just the ones that PreVeil's engaged in, but all of them. And then the third value approach I'll get into a little later is our partner community. And what we've really focused on here is really making sure that whenever you deal with a PreVeil partner, whether it's a managed service provider, a registered practitioner, those are the consultants around CMMC, or a C3PAO, those are the assessors, that anytime you're dealing with one of them, you're dealing with someone that knows PreVeil. They know our system, our people, our compliance model, our documentation, our encryption, how we do that, so that you can save a lot of time and money when you're working with these folks. And they can, of course, provide guidance on any of the aspects of the NIST CMMC journey. Okay. With that, I will turn over to Noel. She's going to kick off with our 10 steps to CMMC compliance. I think I've got the 10 steps on the next slide if we want to use that too, Noel.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead and put that up real quick.
All right.
So like Vince was talking about, the accelerator is exactly what it sounds like. We're trying to accelerate your compliance, because the information that we got from our customers and prospects were, man, this is great. PreVeil is awesome. I love the information you provide, but what do I do next? What is my next step? What is my first step? Where do I even go? So as you see here, we have our 10 steps to compliance, and that's how we've actually set up the entire accelerator with information for each of those. So I'll go ahead and steal the screen back real quick, Vince.
Okay, I will give it up.
Thank you. And as you see here, we see the same steps here. This is the learning management system that we call PreVeil Compliance Accelerator. So as you see, we've got some 0 steps here. One of the ones that our customers have been raving about for the past few months since we came out with it is, how do I secure my endpoint? So this is actually a course with a video and documentation. I'll just show you really quick. This document is step by step how you want to, as you see, there's lots of information in here. This is painstaking information that we went through with this for Microsoft. So that was something, just as an example, this course entirely came from customers asking for it. This was not something that the LMS or the accelerator had originally, but we're constantly updating based on what our customers need, which is what's really great about this subscription, because it is a subscription. You're having something where every time there's an update, every time that CMMC changes or something changes in the environment or the ecosystem, which, as we all know, happens a lot, we are going to be here to update that so you get the most up-to-date information possible. And then also things like, our endpoint course, just getting feedback from our customers. How can we make this experience better? So let's just dive into the 10 steps. We've got some information here, an overview of everything with the different steps. If you need a consultant, maybe you need to ask yourself some questions. Maybe you're not sure if you can do this by yourself or not. How do subcontractors fit in? This is, again, just information that people wanted from our customer base. The 10 steps start right here with step 1. So we're just going to dive into this one. This is, man, I should get a shirt that says this and wear it every time, every time I say this. the most important step you're going to take is scoping your boundary. It is going to be the most important thing you do with your implementation. So you got to take it very seriously. We have a video here with me explaining how to scope your boundary, different things to think about. You have a document that actually walks you through and even gives you an estimated level of effort on how long this step is going to take you. And if you look above, it'll actually explain to you, okay, well, what is a high level of effort? What is a medium level of effort? Am I low? I don't know. And you, as the customer, get to make that decision. And then you have a nice little estimate of how many hours that step's going to take. And it walks you through asking you questions. Hey, where is your COI? How are you using your COI? And all the different things that maybe if you scoped your boundary alone, you wouldn't remember to think of. We also have the slides that I present here available as well. And there's always some additional compliance resources as well. So each one of these different courses is set up very similarly with the video, document slides, and additional information. You'll see familiarizing yourself with NIST, conducting a self-assessment. We also have creating POAMs. So if you're not familiar with what a POAM is, that's a plan of action or milestone. These are the things that you're tracking that you need to get done that maybe you haven't 100% gotten done in your implementation of the 110 controls. So we have document, video, slides, but we also have a template on this is an example of every single control and objective that we at PreVeil have nothing to do with. Because there are obviously going to be some that are really just customer responsibilities. Like, for example, controlling information posting on a publicly accessible system. That's like your website, your Facebook or whatever LinkedIn that you have. Obviously, PreVeil has nothing to do with that. However, we still address each one of these and give you an example of how you can actually close that. And what I really like is you also have like a little score up here for like how far along that you've gotten, and it'll actually count down from your -203 to 110, which is nice too. So now we talked about a couple of these steps, but the biggest one, step 6, which is documentation. Any of you who are not super new to CMMC will probably go, oh gosh, documentation. Yeah, it's a lot. There is a lot of documentation in CMMC. It is very documentation heavy. So you'll see same setup here. We also have our shared responsibility matrix that's in here. That was something that Vince had referenced earlier. But this is where we really just have an amazing amount of information. So you'll see a system security plan here that I'm actually going to show you a different version that's easier to see in a minute. But you also have all these procedural documents. And you see, it's not just one procedural document. Most of these have several different documents, or in this case, videos attached to them. I think we're actually up to almost 80 documents and different pieces of information now. As you can see, it just keeps going. And also additional things. Here's a good example of, again, another thing that a customer asked for. I'm a prime and I have subcontractors. They went through our subcontractor course and said, you know what? I need some way to be able to show that my subcontractors are compliant, but something easy that they can fill out fast. So we made one and it's ready to go. Same thing here. There's also at the bottom here a little video that one of our customers asked for. This is just a quick CMMC intro video. If you had employees that, you're about to go through an assessment, you should let all of your employees know that you're going through that assessment just so they're aware. This video is a great way to do that. It's like 6 minutes. You send it out to everybody. They watch it. You're good to go. And again, more of the additional compliance resources. We also have videos for every single one of the families. This includes lessons learned from C3PAOs who have gone through assessments, talking about what they have seen and how OSCs and OSAs maybe have missed the mark on some places and things they've done really well. There is an absolute wealth of information, especially in this step, but really in all of the steps. And you'll see here as we go down to the other steps, obviously we move finally into assessment. But right now, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen real quick. And I'm going to show you our system security plan. There we go. And how those different standard operating procedures connect with them. So we had a lot of customers who said to us, okay, well, what am I supposed to do with this SSP? How am I supposed to fill it out? A lot of customers have that question over and over again. Well, is this the right way to say a statement? Is this the right way to say a statement? I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to include here. So what we did is invent a fake company. It's Acme, obviously, our Acme Inc. And so Acme has a full system security plan and full documentation associated with it. So if I'm a company and I'm looking to see how a system security plan is set up, I could come in here and say, okay, I'm just going to go to the first one, 3.1.1. And you notice here, it specifies that in this case, it's CMMC level 1 and level 2. So this company, our example company, keeps all of their FCI and CUI in PreVeil because they want to keep it easy. So you'll see here, we've got the full statement here. The objectives are identified. These are the objectives that this statement is going to address. And you'll notice a lot of times there's something else linked, this supporting documentation. Excuse me. Those are those artifacts and evidence. If you hear artifacts and evidence, really all they mean is how can you prove that you're doing what you said you're doing? That's it. It could be a configuration setting, it could be a screenshot, and it could be something like this, where in your system security plan, you link it to this outside supporting documentation. One of the really big benefits of doing this is that now this document, this user access roles, will always stay current outside of your SSP. Let me tell you right now, this file alone, just this file alone is in 70 different places in this SSP, and I'm not even exaggerating. I don't know about you, but I don't want to have to update my list of users inside of an SSP 75 times. That just seems like a lot. So this way, you end up with a much easier to manage SSP, and then you have those external documents to really do that more churn and burn stuff that's going to happen day in and day out. So you see here, we've got all the information about PreVeil already listed. Excuse me. And then also we have the commercial 365 user because our example company uses 365. It's got all the information already there. So if we have customers who are using 365 commercial, and we have a lot of them, this is already sort of done for them. There are going to be places where you have to update and adjust. I mean, perhaps these are not the roles that you call these. Maybe this is not actually the file that you call it. There's a lot of things that could be different, but really it does give an understanding of how to address those controls in a way that's uniform and gives you a bit of a prescription. I know CMMC is supposed to be non-prescriptive, but I think a lot of our customers are begging for some prescription right now. So we're trying to give that. And to my point about how things are connected. So you'll see here a reference to a supporting document called Access Control Final. So let's take a look at that really quick and see what that looks like. So this is our example company overview, a small company, staff augmentation. They have some remote employees, they have some physical CUI. We tried to cover as many things as we could from a DIB perspective. So this is Acme's standard operating procedure for access control. So we'll skip down through all this kind of stuff, which is all, typical, but you'll see it has everything already in here. For example, we were just looking at controlling, publicly accessible information, right? There's an entire setup here, an entire procedure for that. On top of that, controlling CUI flow. That's really honestly what most of all of this is about anyway. That document and that procedure is already documented here for you. And again, probably this is not your email address. I'm just going to say probably not. So obviously you need to do some updating. But most of our customers, when they make these updates, they're not usually very involved. Again, like Vince had said, depending on your setup, how you have your technology, how you have your procedures. But the closer you get to our example company, the better off you're going to be on the documentation side, and you're going to save a lot of time. I will say one of those customers that we just had in the past week used all of our documentation, accessed our compliance team, and they were customers, I believe, in November of this past year, and had their assessment in March and got a 110 out the gate. So if that's not that's not a good indicator of how quickly this can be done, this documentation can absolutely save you an immense amount of time. And what's really nice is that at the end of this, I'm not trying to make anyone dizzy, I swear. At the very end, this signature page can be used as a commitment to those roles and responsibilities found inside of this standard operating procedure. So you're actually checking off one of the controls by doing this. So it's a really fantastic offering. Definitely, I tell people all the time, I would have killed to have had this when I was implementing the 110 controls, but I hadn't learned enough to write all of them yet. So like you said, Vince, so happy to help everybody else out there and maybe make it a little bit easier for them. But I know you had some comments on that final assessment piece. So I know that final assessment is step 10, but what are they supposed to do with step 10? How are they supposed to get that assessment?
Sure. Let me go ahead and finish up, and then we'll get into some Q&A and maybe some color as well. So let me share again. Yeah, so we've talked about the PreVeil platform. Noel's done that deep dive into the compliance accelerator. So powerful, so valuable to so many of PreVeil customers now. And it's helping as she mentioned, it's really helping our real customers now achieve 110s on their CMMC assessments. So, one of the unique parts about CMMC is you get to select your assessor. It doesn't get designated for you. The DoD doesn't come in and do a CMMC assessment. You can select a C3PAO assessor. There's getting close to 100 of those right now that have already been authorized. And well, about at least 30 of those, and we're adding several each month, are PreVeil preferred partners. And that means that we have worked with those C3PAOs to make sure that they're educated on PreVeil. They're educated on exactly what Noel just showed you, our documentation packages. In fact, many of them have reviewed that content and have told us that they like the content, that it works, that it meets the requirements. So that's valuable. But most important, they're just familiar with our team, our model, our customers. Many have experience assessing PreVeil customers, et cetera. So valuable to use that. And I've got here on the screen, this is available on our website. If you want to go right now to the PreVeil website, go to our partner tab and look at our partner network. You can see I've sorted here based on assessors, C3PAOs and CCAs. Those are CMMC certified assessors, of which Noel is one. But you can also sort on MSPs, managed service providers. Maybe you want some assistance with some aspects of supporting your CMMC system. Or you want a consultant to help you with some of your documentation creation. Possibly you have some additional systems that are going to be in scope for CMMC. You're going to have CY maybe in a CAD system or in an ERP system, and you'd like some guidance about how to build that into the PreVeil documentation set. Our partners can help with that. And by using a PreVeil preferred partner for any of these areas, you're going to get better pricing, folks that know how to work faster in the PreVeil environment and get it done more quickly. So it just makes a lot of sense to us. It's an absolutely critical aspect of our value model for you around CMMC. So, PreVeil is a proven solution for CMMC. We're constantly evolving and getting better and finding ways to make this easier for our customers to get to the goal line here. So we've already got 23 defense contractors. We've added just a couple in the last 24 hours. Pretty excited about that. It is going to start accelerating now as we go through 2025. We have about 1,800 defense contractor customers now using us for NIST and CMMC compliance, as well as ITAR compliance. Here's just a few of them. You can find a lot more case studies on our website, so please check those out. And then, please come to us for more information. If you're not already engaged with someone at PreVeil, please come to the website, fill out a contact sales, book a demo form. You can reach out by email to sales@preveil.com. And if you want to reach Noel and her team, that's complianceinfo@preveil.com. Feel free to reach out to them and they'll get back to you pretty rapidly. So that's the prepared portion that we have today. We can get into any questions and maybe even a conversation about a couple of the key items.
Okay, thank you very much, Vince. Are you still sharing your screen or is it just my view?
I think I stopped. Did I stop?
Yeah, I think
No.
so.
There you go. All right, couple questions that we have. And maybe I just need to turn on my screen. All right, a couple questions that we asked. One was just submitted, so let's go ahead and answer this. So for CMMC compliance, do companies need to have GCC high licenses or does PreVeil get around that requirement? Our MSP keeps bringing it up as step one in the CMMC process, but I don't quite understand why.
Vince? I mean, either of us could do this, but I wouldn't take it for
And let me just thank the person who submitted this. I'm just going to say his first name, Brian. Thank you for submitting this because this is a question we do hear a lot.
Very important question. And absolutely, look, we all know Microsoft is one of the largest corporations in the world, and they have a good deal of clout, and there will be supporters of theirs, resellers of theirs, partners of theirs that will want to make it appear that that's the only solution for CMMC compliance. Clearly not the case. And PreVeil is not the only option either. There's options outside of Microsoft GCC High and PreVeil that can be used. Now, GCC High is a very capable solution in especially for larger organizations. If you're doing predominantly work for the DoD, then those would be situations where you might want to very carefully consider GCC High for sure. If you're a small or medium business, or if you're a larger company that only has a small portion of their team or maybe a division that's working in CUI, I think you'd want to look at the enclave approach that PreVeil provides. It's lightweight, it's fairly seamless for your users, it enables you to get to compliance more quickly, and most importantly, it doesn't disrupt everything you're doing today in Microsoft. Look, Microsoft Office 365 Commercial is an incredible offering. I mean, so many people use that. It's really effective. It's cost effective. It gives you a lot of capabilities. So keep that. Use PreVeil as your vault for your CUI associated with your projects, right? We can have interconnections between PreVeil and Microsoft Commercial SharePoint. You can use PreVeil in File Explorer for your files. You can have PreVeil in Outlook along with your Office 365 email. So we make it very easy to integrate from a user perspective, but PreVeil is going to be separate from your Microsoft environment. You certainly do not need GCC High.
And I want to piggyback on that too. We've heard that word requirement for GCC High a lot. If you are talking to anybody who is telling you that there is a specific solution provider that is required by CMMC, that's just not the case. I mean, that would be no different if they were saying you have to use PreVeil, right? There is nothing in CMMC. CMMC is specifically non-prescriptive, meaning that you, as the OSC, the organization seeking certification, get to decide how you address these controls. You can use a solution like PreVeil. You could use a solution like Microsoft. You could use a lot of different solutions that are out there. That is up to you. So I would definitely be wary of anybody who tells you there's a requirement for a specific vendor of a solution. Yeah, that's just not the case in CMMC.
All right. Thank you for shedding some light on that. As I'm trying to remember who it says, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So
exactly.
All right. There were a couple questions that were submitted earlier. And let me just go, let's see if we can't go through them. How does one smartly use enclaves to minimize CMMC compliance costs?
Yeah, I mean, I jump in on that. That's something that most of our customers are doing, even our smaller customers. We'll have a customer that only has 25 employees, but only 12 of them need to be managing CUI. So they intelligently only build those folks in, because it's not just the PreVeil licenses that they're cutting down on. It's a lot more than that. The control and management of those endpoints, right? Now you only have 12 of those. The training of those employees, the background checks that may be required of those employees. Think of all the controls that are associated with, for NIST CMMC, that are associated with each of those users, their devices, et cetera. We've really carved that down to exactly what you need. Again, sustainable compliance over time. How do you do this in a way where you can reduce the cost long term? That makes sense. So no, the enclave approach should be considered for, whether it's a large organization, there's a lot of opportunities for sure to use enclaves. But even for smaller organizations, you only need licenses, PreVeil licenses, and a compliance boundary that supports those specific users.
I could not agree with you more, Vince. That step one that I said is the most important step, the scoping of your boundary. This is where you make that decision, because if my favorite is when customers will come to us and ask questions, be like, well, I have CUI everywhere. It's all over. Well, you could do it that way. But again, if you're trying to cut cost and make sure that maintenance is going to not take you a million years every single year to keep up with, to Vince's point, if you have less things, less people, less technologies, less facilities, as far down as you can scope that, do it, because that's going to make your life easier. And so I'm glad that it seems like the entire CMMC community has really gotten on board with this approach, because in the beginning, people were kind of like, no, everybody has to have it. But that is not the case. And Enclave, honestly, I think is more popular now than the alternative, honestly. So yeah, it just makes sense.
Mhm.
All right, thank you. So let's go through this questions, and we have time for definitely one. Maybe we'll see if we can get through a few more.
Sure.
How do I smartly use, sorry, is an endpoint system or MDM required to fully implement PreVeil as a CMMC solution?
So I'll take that one. That is a great question. And this is essentially the same sort of answer that you'll get from, hey, do I have to have GCC high? You don't have to have an MDM solution. However, there's a big asterisk next to this. That is going to be one of the easiest ways for you to manage that. So remember that the controls are non-prescriptive. So as long as you're addressing the controls and the objectives, how you do that is up to you. I will say that most of the customers we have use an MDM. It's just much easier. However, if you only have one device, or maybe you only have two devices or something, maybe an MDM isn't necessary because you're just managing it from a more manual standpoint. But outside of those type of examples, honestly, once you start having more than about 2 endpoints, I think an MDM or something like that is probably your best bet. But again, not required.
Yeah. And just to add to this, Noel, could you please maybe explain when it comes to any of the endpoint related controls in CMMC that Microsoft's commercial offerings in those space meet the requirements?
That's a great point. So things like Sentinel and Defender and those what we call security protection assets, those are all under a different authorization than commercial 365 itself. So like Azure Commercial, for example, has its own independent FedRAMP authorization. So you can use all of those different solution providers because of the fact that they're separated out from the actual 365 commercial offering. Yeah, that's a good point, Vince.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of maybe there's sometimes some miscommunication from others in the industry indicating that you have to go to GCC High, for instance, to get the security protection assets that meet the requirements. You do not. You can use the SPAs that are associated with the commercial Office 365 offering that you may already have today. You may be licensed for some of those, some or all of those today. You can use those to meet the CMMC requirements.
Exactly.
All right, I think we are out of time, but
One more, come on, one more.
Oh, one more? All right.
We can do one more.
All right, we do have one more minute. Okay, and I'm sure this is something on everyone's mind, but the cost of a third-party assessment. Unfortunately, I think that's a little bit like asking how tall's a man.
It depends. Absolutely. It really does depend. It very much depends on the complexity. So we were talking about scoping that boundary really tiny. That is another way you are going to save money. The smaller that boundary is, the less things that a C3PAO, which is the CMMC third-party assessor organization, that C3PO doesn't have to look at 200, different endpoints, right? They're only going to look at 5. They don't have to talk to 400 people. They only talk to 6. It's just the attack vector is so much smaller. So it's going to mean that the assessment's going to be that much quicker and more effective, most likely. So I will say that the absolutely lowest I've ever seen it is about like 25 to 30K. And then the highest I've seen is in the hundreds of thousands. So it very much does depend. But I know that we have a very strong partner network, Vince, that might be able to assist with that.
Well, I mean, I would say too, I'd be careful about, looking at today's prices as what future prices will be.
Very true.
There
Very true.
currently is a supply-demand imbalance, and I'd say this to any of our prospective folks out there or our customers, is don't move forward with that assessment until you need to. If you don't need it in the next 6 months, don't do it in the next 6 months. Go ahead and get ready for it. Have your SPRS score updated. Have your SSP ready. Know exactly what POAMs you have remaining. Be working through that, etc. But hold off on the assessment till you need it, because the ecosystem will level out over time. There'll be more assessors. There'll be more supply. And the prices will start to go down. They'll get better at doing them. They'll become more efficient, and it'll go down. On top of that, PreVeil's partner network, we've got C3PAOs that will provide discounts for PreVeil users, especially if you're using PreVeil documentation. because they're familiar with that. They've seen it before. And if you're using some or all of our documentation, they can review that much more quickly because they have seen it before and they know that it meets the requirements. So as long as it applies to your business, do that. You can save money. And our partner team will advise you and recommend specific C3PO assessors that are the best fit for your business and your assessment. There you go. We got that one more in.
Perfect.
With that, I do think we are truly at the end of our time together for this month's edition of 10 Steps to CMMC. Any final words?
No, thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it and hope I can work with you here at PreVeil in the future.
Reach out to us. That's what we're here for. Here to help.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Noel. A pleasure as always. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye
everybody.
now.